November 13th, 7:02 PM, Town of Southington Board of Finance meeting. Let us stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. Okay, roll call, Mr. Bose.
Mr. Lebenik,
He's absent.
Mr. Pocock Jr.,
Here.
Mr. Bodwin,
Here.
Ms. Mazzarella,
Here.
Mr. Stanforth,
Present.
Chair Leary.
Here.
You have a quorum.
Okay. There are no public hearing items tonight, so we'll go for a motion to approve the October 9th minutes or amend them as necessary.
Motion to approve?
I'll second.
Motion is second. Any adjustments to those? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstain? Carries 5-0. Approve the minutes of the September 19th special meeting included in the packet.
A motion to approve?
Second.
Motion is second. Any discussion?
I abstain.
Okay, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 One abstention.
Opposed?
Abstention.
Abstain? 401. Those pass. Approving the minutes of September 19th special meeting,
Wait a minute.
the non-executive session portion.
Motion to approve?
Second.
Motion is second. Any discussion? All
Abstain.
those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain, 1. Carries 4, 1 abstention. Okay. We're going to go into executive session for public safety items for the police department.
Do you want to do the?
You do the-
item first?
Want to do what? I didn't hear which.
Tennis.
The tennis.
Oh,
Item number 4.
Item 4.
what did I? Okay, sorry, I missed something. We'll take up under old business the item tabled from the meeting of October 9th, the Capital Projects Fund, the transfer of $78,228 to the Southington High School Tennis Court Project. This is one that we tabled at our October 9th meeting. So when we tabled this, there were two concerns, and now we have the Board of Ed with us. And if I remember the two concerns, one of them was, why is the tennis courts a priority? The referendum, I think it was 16.9 million, the referendum failed. There's a lot of needs on those fields that were not addressed. Some are being addressed piecemeal, right? Whether it's the track, the main field, some work on the bleachers, little stuff here and there, because the referendum failed, but the answer wasn't to do nothing. There's still need, and the need has to be done. Whether it's 17 million is another story, but there is need on the fields. And then before us came a request specific to the tennis courts. And I, for one, and the other members kind of said, well, why the tennis? We weren't opposed to it, but we said, why the tennis courts? And why the amount just to study them of about $80,000 just to study them, and they already exist? That was like a little side question. But the bigger question is, what are the priorities up there? What order are we tackling them in? And at what level of urgency or importance makes the tennis courts a priority over other stuff? And that was a question we didn't have anyone here to answer, so we tabled it. And we just wanted to hear, from Board of Ed, so we thank you guys for being here. And if you could just come up and tell us, like, what are we doing, now that the referendum failed, what are we doing? How are we handling the athletic fields, or whatever you want to call them, the athletic fields? And what's the urgency with the tennis courts? And then we'll take the matter up again. So if you guys can come on up and help inform us, we appreciate it.
We do have the athletic director, Mr. Ritz.
Yeah, Mr. Riss?
Just, if you don't, just introduce yourself.
Sure, absolutely. Thank you, Jim. Steve Risser, Director of Athletics,
Kyle Fickle, Accounting Manager.
and we're representing Superintendent Medancy here tonight as well, who wasn't able to make it. So thanks for having us here. Mr. Leary, let me try to address the question the primary question you had, which was why the urgency for the tennis courts? Because initially, you're right, it was a little bit further down on the list. Let me start by saying this summer, we have a situation with asphalt courts at the Slayton High School tennis courts, for those of you that know them. Matter of fact, all of our tennis courts in town are all asphalt courts right now. The ones that Dave LaPrey looks over as well at the parks. More and more what's happening with asphalt courts is, let me just start by saying we have this situation in New England where they freeze in the summer and then they thaw in the spring, and that goes over time. It happens time and time again. That's why it was in the list for the referendum that was being considered for new tennis courts. I will tell you that, again, the courts had a tough year last year. It's in disrepair. We had to take actually 2 courts off. We took the nets down on them at the high school. We have 7 courts there that we normally use at the high school level for a match. We took 2 of them down because we were concerned about the conditions of them. Now, we're going to address those temporarily, probably again in the spring before our tennis team plays, because we can't really play anywhere else for tennis in town. Right now, I think Memorial has 3 courts, Panthorn has 2, and the Rec has 3. Even if we would spend the money to bus our kids over there for practicing games, it's not practical. We have to play at the high school because there are 7 matches in a tennis match. You need a minimum of 4 at a court so you can even get 4 of the matches started and then follow with the next spring. And at our high school tennis courts, we don't have lights. So anyways, when we had to take those 2 courts down, gentleman and lady tonight, we really felt that now, as you mentioned, the piecemeal approach, Mr. Leary.
Yeah.
At this point, we have, there was a grant that we got for the tennis courts combined with some money we were able to do. I welcome you to all come over to the high school. It's a beautiful new track, finally, and that was the ultimate priority of the public, I believe, and the high school, that we need to get that track fixed. So that's been accomplished. Next year, our plan is to do the new bleachers and the press box at the high school field. But I would say right now the priorities are that the bleachers are the original bleachers that have been there. I mean, they've been there for decades. So that's a safety issue for us. That remains our priority, but we also believe now the tennis courts have moved up even past the resurfacing of the turf field just because of the condition of disrepair that they're in, and the fact that right now we had to sit 2 of the courts out for the starting last summer. So yes, it has been moved up in the priority list because we really have nowhere else to play in town. And unless we're going to send our team on the road for all of our matches, which isn't practical or fair to them, we feel that over the last 5 years, the 2 West Hartford high schools, Conard and Hall, have replaced their tennis courts. Farmington's replaced theirs. Berlin's replaced theirs. Windsor, East Hartford, Manchester, go down the list. In the last 5 years, everybody's moving past asphalt courts to be fiscally sound in the future and going with the post-concrete. So let me address your other side issue. It was, why do we need $78,000 now? Well, this is a little bit more complicated of a project, doing the tennis courts, than, for example, the track. The track was done where the other track was. We could pretty much lay it right down where that track was. The tennis courts have 2 issues. One, we have to move them. Because right now, another reason to be doing the tennis courts isn't just the disrepair they're in and the condition they're in. We don't have USTA regulation tennis courts. When they were put in around the time the Ag Science Building was built, their baselines aren't far enough back. We can't host a conference or a state tournament match there because it's okay for the regular season, but they don't meet the standards of USTA standards. So we're going to have to move when we do the new courts, whenever funding becomes available, we're going to have to shift them and move them back a little bit to give us more room, And as part of that, it's going to affect, we have certain issues with drainage for where storm water can go. We've got issues with elevation of the courts that we have to take into effect. So we need it's not just research on it, John. It's an engine for somebody to be a design and engineering company to come in to help us so that when we do get the funding, we're ready to go. The funding might not, who knows when the funding will come, but we want to be ready for it when the opportunity comes up to do it. and there's some preparation that has to be done, and that's why we're calling it, Kyle can address it, a design and engineering company to work with us with all the issues we have on campus to make sure we fit it in properly and we build it properly.
So that
So I
takes
hope that-
time and money then.
Correct.
It's both.
So that's where we are coming from. And Kyle, you can clarify anything there from a business point of view. But I hope I answered the two questions that you were
When you-
asking.
When you say it needs to be bigger, so you're going to go push it back towards field hockey? How many
Yes,
feet? Like another
right.
10 feet? Is that kind of?
In that area, 10 to 20, but, and the other issue I didn't bring up is, it's both, all 7 courts are too short. So it's both the 3 courts, those you are familiar with, there's 3 in the front and 4 in the back.
Right.
So, yes, it would be moving into that field, which has some issues, which we were going to deal with if the referendum would have passed. But there's also, since the referendum was looked at, we've realized there's a our operations department has found there's a gas line that goes at the back of that, when we go back, that second 4 courts, when we would move them back, and we're going to have to negotiate our way around that. And again, I believe that line services the Ag Science Building, but there's all kinds of issues. It's not quite as simple as when we did the track. Simple is not the right word, but it's a little bit more challenging to do the courts. So that's where I am on that.
And Kyle, from your perspective, thanks for being here, but from your perspective, have you looked into these other towns that built the tennis court? Not for the engineering, because that may be unique to us, for all the reasons Steve said, but have you looked into what the cost of a court is, so that when it's time for us to strike, we know that we're reasonable compared to our peers?
So our goal with this RFP is to get a rough estimate of magnitude, like a rough order of magnitude for the entire cost of the courts. So in preparations for this, I reached out to the town of Wallingford, who has recently done a bunch of tennis courts in town, and 2 other districts throughout the state. Had conversations with their engineers about what they did for their facilities in tennis. And after that, I reached out to the architectural firm that is doing our track, currently SLR out of Cheshire. Kind of gave them what we are looking to do in a rough description, and just saying, how much should we put aside for an RFP to hire an architectural and engineering firm who would also handle the construction management of the project to go out to RFP for. And they were the ones that suggested having between $70,000 to $80,000 to hire an architectural and engineering firm. That would cover all the design. They would manage the contractor that would come in and do it. And to start out, they would give us a rough order of magnitude, kind of detailing us how much the entire project would be start to finish.
So then when we went forward with it, whatever that number is, this firm would step up and say, we have the whole entire design, here's what we're doing. You wouldn't have to really say much at that point, as long as you agreed with the overall architectural work.
Right, and they would help during the bidding process of going out looking for a
Okay.
contractor and throughout the entire course project, start to finish.
And that was like 2 years ago. I've been playing on it. I know the history of what these tennis courts have looked like, and cracks are getting wider, and they just do, the quick, patchwork. And then now the cracks are uneven. I know he said there, I said, so you run up to the net, you got a crack there, and if it's uneven, you trip. We're just lucky there's been no lawsuits, because I drive by that, I live in that area, so I drive by it every day.
Yep.
Summertime, a lot of residents are playing on it. It's everyone uses it, not just the team itself, but like I said, there's nowhere else to play. And it's so important, because they need it to have a sport, like, as opposed to, I know sitting in the stands is important too, but I think having a sport is important for the kids in town. In the youth leagues too, because I know you do tournaments there in the summer, like there's always tournaments there. I see people there all the time, but this has been going on for years, and that's
It didn't just start.
years.
Which brings up another question, like how prepared are we to maintain the stuff we build? So for example, it's not your issue, Board of Ed issue, but we built Rails to Trails, got all excited, got some grants, got it done. Everybody smiled, said, look how proud we were of ourselves. And then later, the police department said you added a whole new linear park in a way that has to be policed. It's open to the public from all angles. The Highway and Parks Department said, we got to mow this thing. Then somebody decided they'd shovel half of it because people like to use it in the winter. And then people got lost on it, didn't know where they were if they had an emergency. We had to put these numbers. But the ongoing upkeep of it wasn't really part of the conversation when we built it. We're so happy to have built these things that we don't think of the ongoing upkeep. So when we do get the tennis court, we pay the 80,000 plus whatever to build it, how are we going to ensure we take good care of it? Not to say we could prevent a crack, things deteriorate, but what do we do to take care of the stuff we have?
Well, that's an excellent question, and if you don't mind, Kyle, I'll address it. I feel like in New England, I'll just start by saying what I talked about before. The idea of doing an asphalt tennis court, we could continue to patch it, to the gentleman's point, but he's spot on. When you continue to patch an asphalt court, it's only going to last a year or two. We did it 3 years ago. We did it another time 3 years before that, before the pandemic. And the problem is the surface becomes uneven. What happens is the patching isn't, it's just a fix. And what happens is the quality now of the court isn't right, because if it hits one of those patches, you're not going to get a true bounce. So I just wanted to address that for a minute, because you're right on with that. But the standard now is to do what they call a post-tension concrete court, which for the most part, it's being raved about, because these courts don't crack now. There's expansion built into the.
But do we then have to watch drainage around there, that we're clearing drainage pipes or whatever? Like when we put the turf field in,
Right.
there was a machine we had to run on it that shakes the stuff that's in it. But if we don't do our part, the field doesn't last as long as it's supposed to.
Well, I'm glad you brought that
Are
up.
we prepared to do our part when we put something new in?
Right. Yes, I believe we are, because we've learned from the turf field. I'm glad you brought that up. That grooming and that we use every year from the tickets that we sell, that we pick $1 from every ticket that goes into that fund, that we take money out of that every year to groom the field, to clean it and groom it. And another reason why we're comfortable saying at this meeting that the tennis courts perhaps need to be done just as soon as the bleachers, or as quickly. Because we've taken such good maintenance of the turf field, people are raved that it's a 12-year-old field right now, and it probably can be pushed a little bit. I don't want to be held to it tonight, but we could possibly push that turf field a little bit more now because of the maintenance that took place. So yes, I
Okay.
think we have an obligation to look at a new court if we're able to get the funding. Once we get it done, we have to work to maintain it. They say, just like everything, you have to do some kind of an annual maintenance, and I think we're going to be committed to doing that on every new project that we do in the near term.
Yeah, let's make sure from a
Including the
finance
tracks.
perspective, too, we don't leave that out.
Yeah, including the
With such
track, including the,
excitement to get something done, we don't leave out the broader costs.
right. For example, that new track that was just put in 7 years, it's going to have to be resurfaced again, and we know that. But for years it went on and it wasn't even maintained properly. So, I mean, that's going to not be near the cost that we have to spend, that we built it, but there has to be maintenance built into the budget.
Thank you. Anybody have questions, or we could take up this matter, and is it down below here, or is it in the regular?
It's right here in this.
We'll take it right here, number 4.
So I'll make a motion to approve the capital project fund transfer of $78,228 for the Southington High School tennis courts project.
I'll second that.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstain? All right, it carries 5-0. Thank you for being here and
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
bringing the insight
Thank you very
to us.
much.
It's good when we could talk. Thank you so much. And we'll come and see
Take care.
we'll have round 2 on Mr. Pocock and I will come see the basketball court that we talked about last year.
It's another mess.
All right, thank you. Okay, now we can go into executive session. The time is 7:20, and we'll go into executive session with the Board of Finance, the Finance Director, Town Manager, and the Captain and Chief of the Police Department.
Make a motion.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Okay. Good, Sandy? Okay, we've just come out of executive session at 7:47, and we'd like to resume our normal meeting. The first item we'll take up is to include a request to appropriate $20,025 to the Capital Projects Fund for Police Safety and Security. This item was the proceeds from the sale of police equipment.
I would like to make a motion to approve.
No, second.
Motion to approve, second by Mr. Pocock. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, abstained? Motion carries 5-0. Thank you, police, we're good.
The vote on the item.
Information, right? We don't, Jim? Informational. That was already in the fund.
Oh, I see what
We
you're
just
saying.
Say,
Okay,
Chief.
shifted.
Gotcha.
Okay, the financial assessment of our current fiscal year. Jim, we could just go through it on a maybe a summary, high-level basis.
Sure. Item 1 under that financial assessment is the revenues, which went out to you folks with the agenda packet. And you'll see, we've done pretty well with a few items. And there's one item that's sort of a concern, obviously.
Yeah, so the state said they were going to give us money, and then they said, oh, no, by the way, we're not going to do that. But the state's great, everything's great, we're doing wonderful, the state's in wonderful condition.
The state does not inform the municipalities of this grant, but what has happened is, this is sort of what the municipalities provide in state sales tax that sometimes comes back to us if certain needs under that state statute that provide that funding are met. And I don't know what they all are. So you saw the email that I received from the Secretary of OPM, or Undersecretary of OPM, I guess, which told every municipality, it all went out the same day, that, oh, by the way, you're not getting any of that. So and you might remember at budget time, we received $1 million plus in the old year for that. And I was reading, we didn't get much guidance from the state as to what they were going to be doing this year. But I read in a Hartford Courant article through the budget process, if you will. It was prior to February, I know, because that's when the town manager's budget is due to this board. So I would say late winter. I would say that the Hartford Courant was had an article in there about the state of Connecticut, the state comptroller's office, or whoever does that for the state, saying that the state sales tax revenues were expected to be down 20% for the rest of the fiscal year. So I took that to mean, okay, let me lop 20% off, give or take, from my revenue estimate. So that's why I as I explained to Alex today when we talked about this item, that's how I came up with the method to the Jim Bozeman madness, was to say, hey, I can't rely on it. I'm not going to put 1.1 million in, even though we got that. I rounded it down to $1 million because I always round revenues down, and I lopped 20% off, and that's how we came up with the 800,000. Fortunately, everything else seems like it's holding its own. So, and I'd recommend to the folks that the fellow or the gal who follows me that put a zero in there. Put a zero in there for next year, so.
So not only will we not budget $1 million of revenue, we're going to lose
800.
roughly 800,000.
800, yeah.
Yeah.
But the good side of that is that our other revenues, our 5 main drivers that we always seem to look at are holding strong. So all in all, it's about little over $500,000 to the good, through the end of October. The second item, any questions on the rev side, or
No.
on the,
Sad, though, but it is what it is.
on the expenditure side, item 2, there's only one item. At the last meeting, you might remember, Alex and I updated you folks on the overtime issue with regards to fire due to a couple absences due to surgeries. The chief called me a couple days after that meeting. I guess he had watched our watched a meeting on YouTube and said, oh, there was a little bit of a miscommunication there, and he wants to come in and explain it a little bit better. But unfortunately, there's a police chief's training thing this week, I think, for Connecticut police chiefs and officers, so he was not able to attend tonight. But he asked me to make sure I put this on your December agenda, which I will. So I'm sure you remember that item. That there's money we're going to be moving around to cover some of that within his budget, which he's still working on. But he said there might have been a little bit of a miscommunication or my misunderstanding from when he spoke to me about it, and I spoke to Alex about it, and then spoke to you about it. But so that'll be cleared up when he comes in and speaks at December. And in December, the fire board will probably have recommended a transfers of funding to solve at least a part of that at that time. But I wanted to just address it again because it's still not, it still hasn't been addressed 100% correct, and I think you're owed that. So the chief wants to do that as well. So Chief Eric Keith will be here at the December meeting. Item 3, the review of the contingency budget line item. You'll see there was no changes in last month, so we used a whopping $300 of that so far. And there's a couple items on the regular business items, item 2A and 2B, that are coming down the pike, one for $2,400 and one for $1,000, which are transfers out of contingency. That's all we have for this month.
So it'll remain largely unchanged
Correct.
at $1,071,071.
Correct, and we want to keep it that way until we get, obviously, through winter and see what the storm expenses are like. And capital projects, we reviewed the quarterly last month, so the next quarter won't be till 12/31. And there was, under number 5, no other funds were requested, so.
Thank you.
That's the end of that report.
Those town subcommittee reports, sewer.
Yeah, the problem with sewer is we meet the day after our Board of Finance meeting. I always forget what I had at the meeting. But I remember nothing that's going to affect the general fund finances.
And that's really the point, right? Any finance-related issues. Public Works,
No financial updates at this time.
If I may, and maybe the town manager could answer more than, the LEAF program, how's that going? A very popular program in town. It's in the middle of it right now. Going to get a quick up.
Very popular program, very expensive. Fix them up and I'm not sure if you saw the news. Operating and all dust, so. Well, it is very expensive, but it's very popular.
On time, right now?
We are right on 7 to 5. The normal hours are 7.
Last year, I think we went through the whole town twice.
Almost twice. The goal is to get 2 this week. 6 2 times. Every
Don't,
shooting for
3 and
don't-
4 aren't guaranteed.
Nothing's guaranteed. If it snows, nothing's guaranteed. But we're going to try.
So Alex, when you say it's coming out, you mean as they vacuum it, like the dust is coming out from behind and
Product, too.
getting
Yeah.
out? Because that happened in my car, not here,
You were
but in like
covered?
Plainville.
Yeah.
I was
Plains was
visiting
having a
my,
big issue.
I was,
Yep.
I thought they did it on purpose. My whole car. You know why? I went to my father's house early in the morning and I heard this beeping, and it was the town trucks, but the pile was like 15 feet in front of my car. So I'm like, all right, my car's not in the way. So I see him sucking it up. I look, no big deal. And, then I look out like 10 minutes later, my car was covered from the hood, the top, and in the back. I go, how did that happen? I go, did they get mad and just like somehow sprayed on my car too? So, and it was all over the road. So that's what's happening. Okay,
We
that
called
makes
Plainville
sense.
right away, and they said, yeah, we've been dealing with this too.
Yeah,
A lot of
and it did scratch a little, but,
Yeah.
what
I
am I gonna
picked
do?
up- I picked up leaves Friday morning, I spent the day picking up leaves, and I've got,
Yeah, because I videotaped it after,
Okay.
because I was like,
Yeah.
I wasn't sure if they were mad because my car was near the pile, but I'm like, I've never seen this before.
No, it's happening in surrounding towns,
Okay,
too.
yeah.
Thank you for the
Too
update.
dry. All right, open space.
Nothing new right this moment. There's a lot going on, but it should be by the next meeting. It should have some.
Self-insurance?
So our meeting's next week, right, Jim?
No, that
The
meeting
20
was
Postponed?
postponed. The November and December meeting are being combined into one meeting. I believe it's December 4th. I sent that out to all the committee members. Do me a favor. Check to make sure you
Yeah.
got it from me. And if you didn't, let me know.
Yeah,
I'll
I
get it
didn't.
back to you.
Yeah, I
There's
was
no
looking at-
agenda.
I was
or
looking
anything.
at the normal schedule, that's why. I just
What were you
happened to
tr-
have it on my desk.
What we were
I'm like,
trying to do is work a time in where Anthem would have that, the first blush, if you will, the first attempt at the 25-26 renewal.
Yeah,
And then Joe needs a couple days with it to sort of turn it into English for us and translate it to how that first step is going to be. Normally, or maybe you folks don't know, the Self-Insurance Committee would make that first recommendation because the Board of Ed has to start their budget
Yeah,
process a
early.
little bit earlier. But that is also, we try to start a little bit higher because the charter kind of precludes us from increasing items through the budget process once it's in your hands. We have to have a special meeting, et cetera, et cetera. So we try to start high, and hopefully things don't get worse than that first Anthem renewal projection. And then hopefully they get a little better, and through the budget process, both sides, the schools and the town manager side, can come back to you guys and say, we can reduce a little here, a little there, and I know you guys
Yeah.
appreciate that but it buys us time.
Looks like we have a little soft spot in the retirees and heart and hypertension.
Right.
Everything else seems like we're running on or a little bit better than budget in a good place, but in heart and in the retirees, we budgeted 527 and we're at 700.
Well, we budgeted.
I'm
we-
sorry.
Wait, you were good?
Yeah, we budgeted 700, we're at 527 for the year, that's correct. I gotta take a look into see, there was one very major claim, and that's the one that was paid in August. And that hurts us because, as you know, when, usually a public safety, employee
Right.
retires, they're allowed to stay on the plan until they're 65, if they choose, as long as they don't break making they pay full COBRA, of course, but, what you pay in, even if you're paying for an expensive plan, gets wiped out with one big claim, of course. So, but what happens is if a public safety employee retires, the job is refilled. That job is replenished, and usually very quickly. So, you don't really lose that, some of those claims that come in health insurance where some other departments might, you may not need to hire, or you may not need to hire right away. So the retirees, they're retiring younger, they're retiring in their 50s. That's a long way to go. So those claims do look a little ugly through
Yeah.
through
Well,
the
we
first
have-
3 months of the year.
So wait, through September, so we have 3 months through September, we're a little over budget by 390,000, but it looks like September is where we must have had the big claim, right? Because we're over budget by 500.
That's correct.
Thousand, and it was on the Board of Ed side
Yeah.
somewhere?
Well, John was talking specifically, or Wayne was specifically about the police, or, I'm sorry, not the police, the retirees section.
Yeah, but that's
So
only 16,
That's
yeah.
correct.
The Board of Ed had the big one in September.
In a whole, if you're looking at page 4, my handwritten page 404, in red,
Where's that?
you're seeing that it's, except Alex's, his
I don't have-
is in gray.
Yeah.
Because I like to put things in red and show you color. He would fire me if I wasn't retiring. No. You'll see if on page 404, at the bottom of where it says the fiscal 2025 total, we are $390,214
Yeah, right.
of claims higher than what we projected. Now, that's only through September. On the agenda, I promised you October. We did not receive it from Anthem, so I can't get it to you, but we do have the summary. The summary was about 1.7 million for the month of claims and fees, and if you compare that to the 2,081,000, we're about $300,000 less for the month of
We're about
October. So through the month of October as a whole, we're probably about 90 grand in the
And that's
red.
what we look at self-insurance.
Okay, so, just to update you, even though we don't have that number.
No problem.
We're in shape.
Those
No,
numbers.
we're flat. Yeah, it's perfect right now.
Okay, thank you. Let's, economic strike, anything?
You haven't met in a while.
Okay. And no committee of the chairs meeting, too. We haven't met in a while. It's not on here, but. Any other subcommittee reports? Anything from investment other than we see the,
Well, the only question I would
Interesting
have, Jim, now that the Fed has lowered the interest rates by, 0.75%, have you seen any impact to the town? Either we have future bonding and we're going to get a lower rate, or our investment income might be a little less than our budget now because they're going to be lowering a little more?
It always seems that financial institutions have a way of reducing how much our income is before they reduce how much we pay them. Yeah, we are starting to see a curious thing happen. When the Feds reduced their rates by 50 basis points a month or so
September.
ago, for a few days prior, we saw rates starting to come down, which means the bankers were kind of expecting it. I don't know if they're expecting 50, but that's what happened. For about a week or so, rates did come down a little bit on some of the more liquid, more short-term type of stuff. Interestingly enough, and for some weird things, I'm not an economist, I can't explain it. About 2 weeks later, we started to see rates go back
Right.
up on the short term and on the long term. Long term, let's say a 5-year CD for the most part, we're talking about 3.5% after the Feds cut 50 basis points. Those are back up to about 3.75% right now. So they actually gained about 25% on the interest, on the income side I'm talking here. Now, why? I don't know. But if you pay attention to some of the financial news, and I watch CNBC because that's the financial channel when I can't sleep at night, you're seeing mortgage rates actually start to pick back up.
You're talking about recently. And
Recently.
I think that has to do with the
With-
election.
With some, well, they went up
Because,
on the
I-
30-year fixed rates did go up.
Yeah.
They went up about a good 45 basis points on,
Yep.
from what the folks were saying on CNBC. And that sort of was in correlation to where we were seeing them on the very short-term rates, after the Feds reduced their,
Another quarter,
overnight. Yeah, well, they did another quarter.
another quarter, but then they're looking into the future, and that's, the market does its own thing outside of the Fed too. So that's why you're saying, even though the Fed's lowered 0.75, the market's actually hasn't gone down. They've actually gone up a little.
Yeah.
Because Wall Street's different than Main Street when it comes to stuff like that.
Well, an economist once told me that the Fed rate is more on the short term, affects
Yeah.
the short-term stuff, both on the
Car
expense
loans.
side and on the revenue side. And the market more or less dictates
Long-term.
mid and longer-term stuff. No one's ever proved economists to be right or wrong, so I don't really value the science that much.
Well, it fluctuates all the time.
I like
so.
accounting.
Each day it
Accounting is hard numbers. I'm sorry. I'm a little biased. I admit. My wife was an economic analyst in a former life, and we used to fight all the time.
I'll go with your wife.
They're theorists, huh?
I'll go with your wife.
They were
I like that fight better.
They were theorists. But if I make a mistake, if John makes a mistake, even you at the state, Wayne, accountants, it's right there in black and white. Economists make a mistake. Oh, everything else happened, which
Like the weatherman.
like the weathermen. They're like weathermen for numbers. But
let's
but
get
that's-
on to the fire commission.
I'm sorry.
liaison.
I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman. I didn't mean to waste your time.
Fire commission, anybody go to the fire commission meetings?
No, I just talked with anybody up there, and the town manager, I'm sure he knows, it's just basically overtime and been real busy. Real busy. So, and I know we had some retirees up there, a couple, and et cetera, et cetera. Overall, that's,
Any other thing, just hearing from, the election was complicated, not the results of it, tabulating it, right? The work on behalf of the town, we're going to probably have to change the way in which we approach elections and the money we spend on them because of the amount of work we had to put into them.
Oh, with the early voting, you mean?
Early voting, and now the referendum passed for the no excuse absentee voting.
And-
It could just change the whole landscape of what Election Day used to be versus what we're going to see in the future, and we got to prepare for it financially.
And we don't know what the absentee is going to look like, but now there's two avenues for early voting. You can just absentee or you can early vote. I'm not sure why they have both at this point. Absentee, the cost us an arm and a leg. Concerns with this building, it was difficult.
Yeah, the
Point.
parking, because I will say, you guys did a great job with early voting. We went, my family went, it took us like 10 minutes, and even, and that's with my daughter, like, wasn't really registered, so they were able to solve it right there, and she was able to vote. Yeah, the parking, because
Oh,
Tough
you got
go.
the side, so I actually parked in apartments over there, or that,
Housing authority.
I had no choice. It was all packed, and, yeah, that's the problem.
So this isn't the ideal location. The issue is registrars are based out of here. You have to really move.
Drive
Yeah,
through.
and it's
Yeah.
tough,
yeah,
That's
Yeah.
coming.
yeah, the
Bite your
parking.
tongue.
take it easy.
But it is going to be the process has to change, has to be looked at. The rug was pulled out of the traditional voting process. A new voting process is coming in, and we just have to be prepared to handle it financially and logistically. If we fail to do anything, it's just going to bite us even harder in next year, whenever they do it again. I don't know how. And then sorting out who voted absentee, who voted in person early, and who voted on election day to make sure only one of those votes lands. The pecking order of when you look at them is a challenge. So I guess we got to reprocess engineer the thing.
We did have several people early vote and then out to make sure.
So it's a whole process re-engineering, but from a finance perspective, we should make sure we engineer it the most efficient way, so the cost is the least amount of cost and pain, and, because cost is more than dollars, right? It's the stress and aggravation, the long hours, the pressure. We gotta design this thing based upon the new rules. Okay. Any public communications? Any board member-to-member communications?
Yes, I just wanted to remind our Director of Finance that he promised us a cash flow. Suppose we'll add that information. Breakdown of cash.
You're right. Your memory is very good. Unfortunately for me, I forgot all about it, Wayne. I do apologize. I will put that on
It's right in
the,
the minutes here.
I believe you.
Okay.
Trust me, I believe your memory.
All right.
My apologies.
Just
I think we were talking about the cash flow at the end, what the cash balance, if
When the
the
cash
invested
comes
balance
in,
was
and
at the end of the month,
Yeah.
month-ending cash balance. Actually, I think I might have even mentioned it to my treasurer. I just forgot to follow up with her, but your memory is correct.
Well, and one other item, I mean, it doesn't affect us direct, well, it does, it will at budget time. The Board of Ed had their negotiations with their salaries and an answer. Why that would be secret to us, I don't know. Why they would not share that with us.
Do you know if it went to a union vote yet? Was the teachers, the unit, I believe,
They
correct?
are-
I don't know if that went to a vote yet.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's all settled, so,
okay.
I mean, why wouldn't they reach out and just give us some indication of what happened there for budget season?
I didn't hear anything.
I heard before the vote.
Was it a
Even an
3 or
official-
4 year? Do you know that? It was
I-
3,
I think it was a 3-year.
I think it was like 13 and a half in that range, 13 and a quarter total for the 3 years.
I just think it's weird that they would just not make any indication.
Ratified as public
Yeah.
document, so I can.
Trying to be a little proactive to, what's going to happen,
It's
you
going
know?
to be,
If it is high, the budget is sure to go up.
No, it's
Yeah,
going to
that's a good
impact.
question.
budget.
Should we know
It's-
now
it's
as
not a
opposed to
Southington
when the
issue,
Board
it's
of
a-
Ed comes
it's
in
a-
and says,
It's
here's our
a
budget?
state issue. They're coming high. Where they came in was pretty reasonable where everybody's.
Yeah, I think the average was, like statewide, was between 12 and 15%. Yep, for like other towns. That was the average statewide. It was pretty high, yeah.
We want to be, in a way, made whole for inflation.
Which is inflationary.
Yeah, which is inflation.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, getting into administrative business, let me try and take, if everybody's okay, we'll take all 14 at
I'd-
once. These are
I would
the
like to
consent.
carve out 13 and 14, only because of the dollar amount, Mr.
Okay,
Chairman.
yep, got it. So we'll take 1 to 12 in total. I'll read them, and then somebody could just make a motion, second it, and we'll vote. So these are consent agenda items, meaning the money's already received. We're just appropriating it back to the line item so it could be spent. So there's nothing unique here. All right, first one, $50, Special Revenue Police K-9 Program Supplies. Number two, $976, Police Vehicle Maintenance. Next one, appropriation, $26,131, a Youth DCF Supplemental Enhancement Grant. Next one, $10,500, Youth JRB Grant. Next one, $7,142, Youth LPC Prevention Grant. Next one, $1,780, Youth Services Outside Program Expenses. Next one, number 7, $3,495, Youth Outside Program Expenses. Number 8, $300, Youth STEPS Expenses. Number 9, $2,500, Capital Projects Fund Rail to Trails donation for a bench. Next one, $14,170, Elections Early Voting Grant. Next one, number 11, $4,450, Recreation Department Holiday Program Supplies. And number 12, $23, the Library Building Fund Project Expenses. Do we have a motion to take consent agenda items number 1 to 12 as read in one vote?
Motion to approve.
Second.
Motion is second. Any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstained? All number 1 to 12 carry 5-0. Number 13, an appropriation for $470,000 even, Capital Projects Fund, Library Building Projects Expenses.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Motion is second. Any discussion?
No, I just think that's, now this is money that came in. Is there going to be any change to the library? Is this new money? What we'll,
They're still getting contributions and donations. This is a periodic contribution to the project. As far as a lot of this is going to be doing things like materials and things like that nature of that nature. Possibly some FF&E stuff, furniture and stuff of that. That's was the focus of a lot of the fundraising efforts.
okay. So this is really the library board that, so it's not really the building of the library, it's more of
The library.
inside of the library.
It's the library director, the library building committee, working in conjunction with the, what's the organization in New Britain?
Greater New Britain.
The Community Foundation of Greater New Britain.
Yeah.
Acts as sort of like a depository for that, and then periodically, the building committee has a process where they go and they've asked for the money, so 470 was just given to us.
Oh,
So,
okay.
And I don't know how much left they still have and still have to collect, but I know they'll be coming back with more, which is.
Okay, so that wasn't a grant, that was already, we're just getting the money now.
Well,
We already have it.
these are donations. These are actually, this is in hand. These are donations in hand.
Okay, thank you.
Any further
Thank you.
discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, abstain. Motion carries, number 13 carries 5-0. Number 14 is an appropriation for $500,000 even. Capital Projects Fund, School Athletic Fields. the STEEP grant, Southington High School track project.
I'll make a motion to approve.
I'll second it.
Motion and a second. Any discussion?
So this is $500,000 that now can be added to the capital budget to do other things at the high school?
No, this was part of the documents that I sent along with the agenda. The very last page actually showed this in the budget from last fiscal year, 23-24, but it was in year 2. So we don't fund year 2, we fund year 1. You folks know that, of the first year of the 5-year capital improvement program. This project has now been, it's in the cycle now for us to get the $500,000. And in that documentation I sent you, it'll also show you that our match was $206,633 or whatever it was, little more than $206,000. The Board of Education has used primarily those carry forward, those 2% funds they call them now, or non-lapsing funds sometimes, yeah, exactly, for that $206,000. So now the $500,000, we did not get it appropriated until we, made sure the project was going ahead, et cetera, so that's where we are now. So this is being spent as we speak.
Okay. So it's not money that's replacing something else?
That's correct.
Okay. And we've already voted.
Yeah, so all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstained, number 14 carries. There are 4 items in the administrative business. The first one is an appropriation for $100 to Calendar House for overtime,
And where's that coming from?
I'll make a motion to
general
approve.
fund. It's from the general fund, it's an appropriation. Because it goes to Calendar House, it's a consent agenda item we pulled out because
Oh,
a
okay.
member.
Gotcha.
There's a certain member to your left who
I'll
I
make a
have to-
motion to approve.
who goofs up my agenda every month, but I won't mention his name.
Second by Mrs. Mazzarella. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Abstain?
One.
Yep, so it carries 4-0. The other one is a contingency transfer, $2,400 for human resources training. And then we have another one, 2B, is a contingency transfer for $1,038 from the general fund to human resources advertising.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Any discussion?
Yeah, we hire a new person in that department there?
We have a person who we've used in the past, and it is an executive. Second part of the HR advertising is
For
where we
for
are-
recruiting purposes?
We're trying to
Okay.
target folks. Try this out for a year to see.
Need to do it nowadays because there's not a lot of people out there.
It's the Hunger Games right now.
Yeah.
So,
Thank you.
Any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstain, so it carries 5-0. Number 3 is a department transfer from the general fund to the town attorney's office for legal fees in the amount of $20,000.
I'll make a motion to approve.
Second it.
Motion and a second, any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, abstain, motion carries number 3,
I
5-0.
guess I should have asked, is that the last of our monies we have to spend for this?
it's coming, I'm not going to make a statement because we're not sure. I don't want to say publicly what the town's legal position is. You will know within the next,
Our next
at the next meeting.
Sorry.
Okay, now we look for our favorite motion.
Motion to adjourn.
Adjourn at 8:22 is our motion, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Meeting adjourned at 8:22. Thank you.
Who seconded that?